Hiya. Hope you're well. And I'm going to get right into it. This is one of those groups that I get excited about talking about. Just the thought of discussing these albums and singles and 12 inches and things and remixes I get excited about. And this will probably be a slightly longer video. I've really been trying to keep my videos under 10 minutes, but it's tough when you're talking about these things, man. These are albums and bands that I really have a ton of passion for, and there's a lot of fun little details to talk about. So let me get right into it. By the way, as always, I get little details wrong sometimes. When I do these videos, I'm doing them off the top of my head. I have no notes. I would think that's part of what you guys find is the charm of my channel. I'm not reading and reciting things off of Wikipedia. But with that comes tiny, tiny little mistakes I make. I don't want to hear about it. The vast majority of people out there with brains in their head don't give a single shit whether something came out in 1995 or 1996. So if I get a year wrong somewhere, get over it. I don't want to hear about it. Don't correct me. That is the quickest way to getting blocked on my channel. I put all this time and effort in making a video, and then some dork comes in and says, excuse me, you got the year wrong. That didn't come out in 97. It came out in 96, December of 96. I don't give a shit. I don't want to hear about it. So before you start correcting me on tiny, pointless little details that nobody cares about, just remember to save your bizarre, arbitrary comments to yourself because no one gives a shit. Welcome to my channel. Welcome. Let's talk about electronic. Yes, because we all love New Order. We all love the Smiths. And hopefully we all love the Pet Shop Boys. Talk about a super group, man. Those three coming together. Now I know it's more New Order and the Smiths kind of coming together, but you got to sprinkle the Pet Shop Boys in there too. Neil Tennant pops up in a few places. So Electronic's only ever put out 3 albums, varying degrees of quality. This is obviously an opinion. Many of you might think, I don't know. I don't know what you'll think. This is part of the fun of talking about a group like this is that I think a lot of people will have different standards and different favorites and different non-favorites. And I don't know. It's fun. Please let me know what your favorite electronic albums are. For me, without a doubt, and it's not even remotely close, the first album is not only the best electronic album, but one of the best pop albums I've ever heard in my life. When we go back and look at 1991 and the albums that got released in 1991, I put that debut album, and it's self-titled, by the way, I put that debut electronic album in the top 5. And think about it. Think about what came out in 1991. The White Room, Nevermind, Screamadelica. There are some major. 1991 was an insane year for music. Go look it up. I actually wrote something about this when I worked at Discogs, but there are a ton of albums that came out in 1991 that are just earth-shatteringly good. I think the electronic album was one of the best of that year and just one of the greatest pop albums I've ever heard in my life. And how can it not be when you think about it? You have Barney Sumner, Johnny Marr, and Neil Tennant to a degree all coming together and converging onto one album. How can that album not be good? It's just, to me, in my opinion, it's impossible. The first album is an absolute classic. Beautiful record. Hardly any fluff on there. Yeah, sure, there are a couple of songs, maybe Gangster, that track Gangster. That song, pretty good. Never been a song that I've loved. I don't think it's aged particularly well, but look at the other track. Again, you guys will probably totally disagree with me, but for me, the shining, beaming tracks on that first album are songs like Try All You Want, Reality, like the non-singles. Phenomenal. Patience of a Saint, Tighten Up. And then you look at the singles like Feel Every Beat, Getting Away with It. Oh God, Idiot Country was not a single, although it did get remixed on the Disappointed 12-inch that came out the year after that. Disappointed was not on the album. And getting away with it was also not on the European version of the album. It was on the album here in the States. I do have that original vinyl copy from the UK, and that did not have Getting Away with It on it. So, but it is on the CD here in the States. But you should get the 12 inch anyway. The 12 inch has beautiful remixes on it. You need to have that and get the message. Holy shit, what a great song. Johnny Marr's riff, the writing, just one of the great pop songs of all time. And the remixes are pretty good too. And the B-side to that one, Free Will. Free Will, yeah. Again, I'm going off the top of my head here, guys. If I get a tiny little detail wrong, I don't want to hear about it. Free Will, the B-side. Mm, what a great B-side. The B-side to Getting Away with It. Oh, God. Lucky Bag. I almost said Miami Bag, but I think there's a version of it called the Miami Edit, right? Lucky Bag. The B-sides were killer. I always thought that that first electronic album was truly the spiritual successor to New Order's Technique. Am I wrong here? You New Order fans, do you disagree with this? I think Technique is the last great thing that New Order did. Republic is a mess. Sorry, those of you who like Republic, I just think you're wrong. Republic is a fucking mess of an album. The 90s were when New Order started to tank, in my humble opinion. Always my opinion. Technique is brilliant. I think Technique is New Order's best album. I thought the first electronic album it sounds like a New Order album, really, with Johnny Marr on some tracks. That should have been the next New Order album, really. I mean, it's just a brilliant album. One of the great pop albums of our time. The first electronic album. The other two electronic albums, it doesn't even come close. And going back to Neil Tennant, he was part of Patience of a Saint, which was not a single, and then he did come back for Disappointed, which was a 12-inch they put out the year after that in 1992. And great single, by the way, fantastic single. Sounds very much like a Pet Shop Boys song because Neil Tennant is singing on it, but it's got great remixes on it. It's got a Graham Massey mix on it, which is cool. It's got a Stereo MCs mix on it, which is cool. They remixed Idiot Country. So I mention this because the albums are brilliant, but then you need to go and get those singles too. Fantastic remixes and B-sides to be found. Now, when you get into the second album, Raise the Pressure, I think there are spots and moments on Raise the Pressure that are quite good. There are also some spots and moments on it that are not very good. I don't think Raise the Pressure is a great album. I think it's okay. The songs that are good on it are really good, but I think it's like there's a lot of filler on there. Also, I have the not that this is neither here nor there really, but it is if you're a record collector. The vinyl version of that album is not very good because the album itself is over an hour long and they compress it all onto one record. So maybe it sounds silly, but you record collectors understand this. Like part of my experience listening to that album is the record, and it's not a very good pressing. There's just too much music crammed onto it. It should have been a double album. It's over an hour long. But this album came out in the mid 90s. They were kind of veering away from making so many records. It would be nice to see a reissue of that. Maybe it has been reissued. I don't know. But I have this single record of it that I got at the time, and it just doesn't sound very good. So I don't know. Maybe I'd feel different about it if I listened to a digital copy of it. But there are some really nice moments on that second album, Raise the Pressure. Like the single Forbidden City is really nice. I'm trying to think of it. I'm trying to think of the other singles. Was it Until the End of Time? That was another single. I believe another of the singles was Second Nature. Um, I don't think the singles are necessarily the best tracks on the album. I think Forbidden City is fantastic. For You is a great song. What was the other song? I think is it Free Fall? There's a song on there. It's a non-single called Free Fall. Excellent song. But by and large, the second album, I think, yeah, it's got half of the songs are very strong and very good. The other half are questionable B-side type material. It's a very shiny, very poppy, very accessible album. I think what made the first album so brilliant it is those things, but it also has a darker edge to it, like a lot of New Order did, like a lot of Smiths did. Also, I don't feel Johnny Marr's presence so much on that second album, which is, I don't know. I mean, that doesn't, if you're just listening to the songs and trying to critique them on their own merit, I don't think it necessarily matters if you notice Johnny Marr or not. But because of the overarching feel and approach we have to electronic, knowing that Johnny Marr is part of the band, could have used a little more Johnny Marr. I don't hear his presence so much on that second album. Second album's pretty good. Nowhere close to the first. Now, of the three albums, I think a second place I would give to Twisted Tenderness, their third and final album, which came out in 1999. And the fact that it's been 25 years now is mind blowing to me. But Twisted Tenderness is pretty damn good. That is a really good album. I was revisiting that recently, and partly it inspired me to do this video. But that album has aged pretty damn well, and you definitely hear Mars' presence on that record. That's their most rock-oriented record. It still has the house grooves, and it's a dance album really at its heart, but it's got more rock and roll elements to it than the previous two do. So I would give Twisted Tenderness, if I were to rank them, I'd say the first album was the best one by far, by miles. Twisted Tenderness would be number two. I think it's an excellent album. The singles were really good. Let me see if I can get the singles right. It was Vivid, right? Vivid was a single. Was it, oh God, Prodigal Son, right? The one with the Andy Weatherall mix, the Two Lone Swordsman mix. I have a 10-inch. It's a clear 10-inch, and it's got a Two Lone Swordsman mix on it. I think Two Lone Swordsman remixed Prodigal Son, but I don't know if that was the single. I think maybe Make It Happen was the single. I don't know. I remember singles were Make It Happen, Vivid, and maybe there was one other one. I don't remember. Maybe Prodigal Son was a single. But if you've never heard that Twisted Tenderness album, I encourage you to do so because I think a lot of people fell out of interest with electronic after a certain time period. Those first two albums came out, maybe people's interest waned. The New Order records were getting worse and worse, and the Smiths were long gone, and maybe people's interest just waned. I don't know. And to my knowledge, there is never a vinyl release of Twisted Tenderness. I mean, is there? Does anyone know of one? I've never seen it. And, I feel like I have more channels to get vinyl than most people. Uh, I have the first two albums on vinyl. I don't ever remember seeing Twisted Tenderness on vinyl. Excuse me. So I would recommend you listen to it, though. It is an excellent album. Very, way more intense, actually, than Raise the Pressure. I thought Raise the Pressure was just too nice. I can't think of any other word for it. It was just too clean. And I understand that it's electronic. That's the name of the group. I mean, it's electronic music. But what I liked with Twisted Tenderness is I feel like maybe they felt that niceness on Raise the Pressure and they went another way with it. And Twisted Tenderness kind of ends up being a nice little amalgam of the first two records. Like it's still shiny, it's still very highly polished and produced and mixed, but it also has a grittiness to it, which I felt some of that grittiness was a little bit more present on the first album. And then on the third album, Twist and Tenderness, it's just there right there in your face. So I would recommend getting all three records if you don't have them already, and get the 12 inches too. The singles are essential, I think. The remixes and the B-sides, they all come together. Like a couple years ago, or God, maybe a decade ago, it's been a while. I've been digitizing my collection for 20 years now, and I think they were way up on the list in terms of things I wanted to get done soon because I just love the first album so much. Not so much the second album, but I did rip the first two albums and all the singles, and part of the fun for it for me is finding my favorite versions and putting the tracks in a certain order that make more sense for me, putting the B-sides in there. Like on the first album, I created my own playlist for the first album, and maybe I'll do that here on YouTube. I put the B-sides in there too, because I think that some of the B-sides on that first album are better than most of the songs on the album. The B-sides are just instrumental house songs, but they're still better than. There are a couple of songs on that first album that I don't think have aged well, like Gangster. I mentioned Gangster before. It's not a bad song, but I think Free Will is better. I'd rather hear Free Will than Gangster. So that's the fun of it. You should get the singles too and make your own playlist. It's fun. Or you can just laugh at me and say, "Dude, you have too much time on your hands." And I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you. I do have a lot of time on my hands for music. Music requires time, requires patience, requires love. And not many other groups ask for such a patience or love than electronic, but it's absolutely required to listen to their music because their music's great. I think that first electronic album is better than, I don't want to say most of New Order's other albums, but I think electronic, the first album, is better than a lot of New Order albums, especially all of their albums post Technique. I mean, it's not even close. Not even close. And I would venture to say that the first electronic album is better than Brotherhood. I don't think it's better than, and it's better than Movement. I would not say it's better than Power, Corruption, and Lies, Low Life, or Technique. Those are the three exceptions, okay? But any other New Order album, the first electronic album is better. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think I'm full of shit? Let me know. All right, I wanted to revisit electronic. I have a feeling like a lot of you guys love these guys already, but let me know what your favorites are. Let me know what you think. I always love hearing your comments. Goodbye.